This is Pros Talking Prose coming at you early in the morning because Troy had an epiphany or he read somebody and he's reacting. So I want all of you guys to know this is probably a Troy rant. I'm prefacing this with an addendum. This is an addendum to Pros Talking Prose. This is Stacy wishing that she could be back in bed and, reading the
Troy's has
book.
been up for hours.
Huh?
Troy, who's been up for hours.
I know Troy's been up for hours. And my eyeballs cannot stop watering. So I'm not crying about you. I'm not crying, Troy. Don't make fun of me.
I'm not crying. You're crying.
I'm crying. Well, welcome to Pros Talking Prose, and welcome to the conversation after the conversation. Troy and I have had a chance to actually, I guess, kind of really sort through our thoughts and feelings on this issue, and we want to encourage all of you to do the same. I think that's kind of the moral of the story today is understand and recognize inside yourself whether or not you're being reactionary or not, because that seems to be the popular thing. So yeah, the popular thing to do. So what are we talking about? We're talking about Shy Girl. Yes. We're not going to talk about Mia's alleged use of AI. We're not going to talk about the players involved in this thing, but we are going to mention kind of some perspectives that we want you guys to think about when you're considering writing your own manuscripts and approaching your own author business, because this is really what we talk about here on the Pros Talking Prose podcast. So the first thing that we're going to do is kind of frame this out. Troy, I'm going to let you kind of frame it out a little bit so that you can have a word in edgewise here. And then I will come in and we'll talk about, I'll talk about a little bit about some of those things that as an editor, I see in the AI that triggers this feeling that people are having when they read manuscripts. Okay, so go ahead and tell us about Shy Girl, if you don't know.
The very first thing that I'm going to say about this whole thing, and first of all, if you haven't heard about it this week, I'm not going to tell you everything about the story, but I'm going to tell you some of the story, right? But the main thing that we want to do with this podcast as much as possible is remove the emotional reaction out of it.
Right.
Because for the most part, I don't have a heavy emotional reaction to this in this particular case. I don't know the author personally. I don't know the guy who outed her to the Times personally or the Times reporter personally. Mm-hmm. I have no dealings with Hachette because I deal very little with traditional publishers, except for the one that we happen to own.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I want to take the emotion out of it and simply lay out the facts of what happened. Here's what happened is this gal had a fantastic, or well, not fantastic, I guess. We'll call it a well-selling book, a book that was selling well. Mm-hmm. Selling well is a self-published title. Hachette approached her, offered her a deal. She signed the contract with them. They took the manuscript. They copy edited it from what I have seen. There are 2 copies of the manuscript that are circulating that you can find. There is the original self-published manuscript, which was 2025. Edited for her by a friend. She called her a friend editor. We don't know who that person is. That's okay. I don't need to name names from anybody. She did that. Hachette picked it up. They published it in the UK in November of 2025. There was already some controversy, some online chatter about this book. Now, the one thing that tells you is a lot of people were picking up this book and reading it. Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, you don't generate chatter by people who don't read the book. Right. There's it's called Frankie's Shelf, right? YouTube channel.
Frankie's Shelf. She did a really good job. Or they did. I'm sorry, Frankie. I apologize. They did a great job.
Good job.
She did a very
going through line by line, looking at the manuscript. Some of those people who are readers which I want to clarify that this is kind of where this came from. They are readers. They started, they basically were saying it looks like this person has used AI in the creation of this book.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Whether or not the author still maintains that she did not use AI, that it may have been the fault of her editor friend who edited it for her, we're going to only talk
I'll
about
talk
that a
about that. Yeah.
tiny little bit, as far as just from the editor standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
But then it came out later in the week that one individual had pulled together, who's a journalist of sorts. I would say that he has failed in his job as a journalist, but that's a whole different podcast. He pulled together some information about this book and he thought it would be a good story. He passed it on to the New York Times because they could not hire him because they had a conflict of interest, so they couldn't hire him to write the story. So he passed it to a New York Times reporter who supposedly was going to use him as a source. They did not. So as the word spread about all this controversy because of the New York Times article, he wrote his own article on LinkedIn, and we can link both of those things in the description below, so you can read it all for yourself. And please do read it all for yourself
Yeah,
and read the whole
please do.
article. Please don't just skim the article and the headlines and look at the comments and make your own comments. No, read the whole thing, please. But anyway, so New York Times article, his article, he basically gave his story of this is how I came across this. This is how I passed it on to the New York Times. New York Times released this article. They also talked to Hachette, who was the publisher who picked this book up, and Hachette immediately, because of the suspicion about the use of AI, cut off her contract. Now,
That's
whether
the
the
story.
publisher, that's the story. We'll talk about some of the
We'll
where the
talk some aspects of
responsibility
that,
lies,
but mm-hmm.
in the aspects of that. But what we're really going to try to do is
We'll break this
break
up.
this down instead to a non-emotional discussion of what does this mean for authors, AI, and publishing, and authors, AI, and editors,
Mm-hmm.
because I think that there are a series of, it's like a circus. You can just do with this whole, the way this whole story has come out. There's 15 clowns coming out of the car. It's for
Yep.
my uncle's funeral. He was a clown too. But whatever the case may be, like there's a comedy of errors. There's a bunch of things that should have been done differently all along in this publishing and acquisition process, in my
Right.
personal opinion.
And that, I
But
mean, Troy and I have had now a couple of occasions to talk about this, and each of those occasions have been well over an hour long. We could speak for days to this topic, but let's just break this down into some easy categories here. The first one I'm going to
yeah,
talk about, the first thing I'm going to approach is the accusations of use in AI. Here's where these come from. Readers, Frankie Shelf, like I said, did a great job. Frankie did a great job explaining where the suspicion lies. And I'm not going to totally rehash what they said in their podcast, but I will say this. And I'm going to quote Frankie in this. They said, and I quote, "There's an unshakable feeling that I have that Mia used AI. There's an unshakable feeling." That was Frankie's own words. Now, they couldn't put their finger on it. There is no way to really adequately say, yes, Mia Ballard did use AI. And here's why. AI detectors are crap. It's hilarious to think about you're using an AI to detect whether AI was used. And there's some irony there, right? But the
well,
thing
yeah.
is the thing is that the AI that's detecting the AI is wrong. What does that tell you about AI in general? It's usually wrong. So there's a couple of detectors out there, and I was telling Troy earlier about one in particular that I would really love to get my hands on, because it actually gives me the ability to go in and discern the use of AI, instead of it telling me 60% of this was AI. It gives me the chance
Right.
to actually see what was written and how it was written by the author. And I can see in real time, like kind of like the way the cursor moved, which I would love to get my hands on that thing, because it actually would give me just the ability to say, oh, wait, there's a copy paste here. Let me be real analytical about that copy paste. Here's what I'm looking for as an editor. And here's how I've recognized the AI voice. Guys, there is an AI voice. Yes. And we've talked about this before. Authors have a voice. You have a voice. When you write, it's distinctive. We can tell when we're picking up a Dan Brown book. I can tell when I'm reading an AI. I can tell when I'm reading a Stephen King. I can tell when I'm reading an AI. I can tell when I'm reading a Dean Koontz. I can tell when I'm reading a Troy Lambert. I can tell when I'm reading a Michael Brent Collins. I can tell when I'm reading an AI. There's a voice. So that was just very much my rant. Okay, so here's where this goes. AI's distinctive voice. It comes from repetition. It comes from illogical use of adverbs and adjectives. There's an, if it's an X, then it's a Y. If it's X, then it's just Y. If it's, no X, no X, no X, no Y, but it's Z, like there's this like lead up to like this thing, and it's very distinctive. We can hear it. It is just ugly. There's also a way that you can tell AI writes about things that it can't explain, like love and tension. And it usually writes it as kind of, I call it a ghost, because it doesn't make sense. And it's just this abstract thing. It's intangible, but they talk about quiet and stillness and the hum. You'll see those three things kind of like constantly show up. There's a humming, the hum of silence. What? The hum, the silence that echoed in the room, like what silence are you talking about? Like it's constantly. So when I hear these words, I can honestly say, okay, that's probably an AI. Some other words that have been introduced since the advent of AI: delve. This is a UK word, people. Delve. You know how many
Hey,
times
I
I
like
hear,
that word.
I like delve, but geez Louise, like if delve is used more than once in a manuscript, I'm going to 100% go, my eye is twitching. I don't know if you
I
guys,
think I
if you're
used
not
it twice in my last book. I
right,
like
like
that.
delve. It's one of those words that you're just like, delve. Um, you know, I don't know. There's just words like I can tell when I'm reading a bad writer versus an AI. And Frankie Shelf did also say this. There are bad artists out there, guys. There is bad art. People can create bad art. People will create bad art, and that's okay. What and I've got a couple of those manuscripts in my queue right now. But my point is that I can tell when an AI is used versus when it's a bad artist, and I would prefer to write with a bad artist. And before we move
Mhm.
into some more of this how to react situations, we are going to um touch on kind of like the hatchet or hatchet, whatever. I've
Hachette.
always called it
Hachette.
hatchet. I so here's
It's
my
actually very appropriate. But before we jump there, real quick,
yeah
is so the guy on LinkedIn who outed her, his name is Thad,
yeah
basically, who brought all this information together and kind of brought it to the media's attention. So there was
right.
already chatter around there were already readers talking about this, but he brought it to the media attention. He used three different AI checkers. The primary one he talks about is one called Pangram, which is better than some of the other ones, but here's the problem. It said this manuscript is 78% AI, and it's right 75% of the time. But it has been fed both human manuscripts that we know were 100% human created, and
hmm
it is flagged part of them as AI, and it has
hmm
been fed 100% AI manuscripts that we know are 100% AI, and has said that they are 100% original.
Do you want to know
So
why?
that's how, well, we
I
know
mean,
why.
an LLM is created from human manuscripts,
Hmm.
guys, and then it's
Well,
copying.
So we know the thing is this: we know that we cannot count on AI detectors as proof.
In fact, so
Now
much
he
so that
used
universities are moving away from using them, guys, just so we're
right
clear.
because he used it. He used three different ones, including Zero GPT. I think is what the other one's
Yeah,
called.
that's
That's
another
pretty good.
one. Well,
Tangram and
it's
Zero
not, it's really not
GPT.
good.
But the problem is, none of them, what we know for a fact is none of them are good. And the other thing that I want to point out right now is that the author is saying that she did not use AI.
Right.
Now, whatever we suspect, first of all, in the journal, that's part of the failing in the journalism part is number one thing you do is go to the primary source. If you can't contact the primary source, you don't publish an article that includes references to things that you suspect that that primary source did without some kind of confirmation,
There's a code
right?
of
That's the way
ethics
journalism,
that
it's a
journalism
code of ethics that journalists should follow.
should
They,
follow. They don't
the majority of
anymore.
the time nowadays, they are not following them. The New York Times did not do their due diligence.
No,
Neither did this sad guy, in my personal opinion. So they should
but
not have
that's
published the article. But all that being said, is the author said she's not using AI. If she's not using AI, okay, that means that this AI detector, these three AI detectors were wrong. And that people that are feeling that she used AI, maybe she just writes like a large language model. I don't know. Here's the thing though, if the author did use AI or their editor used AI, as she's talked about, the biggest thing for you to take away as an author is you need to be honest about this.
right.
Because what this shows, whether Hachette was, well, we'll get to that. But basically, whatever the reaction was, it's the consequence of the suspicion of AI. So if you
Right.
genuinely didn't use AI, you need to talk about that from the beginning. If you
hmm
genuinely did use AI, you need to be
Talk about
honest
it
about
from the
that from the
beginning.
beginning,
From the
at
beginning.
least when you're dealing with publishers.
hmm
Okay, you just need to. My thing about AI is I have zero problem, as I've often said, if you draft with AI, whatever the case may be. My problem is when you're dishonest about it.
Yeah.
Now, many of the AI writers I know are very open about their use of AI, and I am 100% behind that because if you're going to use it, just be open about it. Just be honest.
Right.
Okay. That's the number one thing. As an author, your job is to be, you're responsible for whatever content you put into the world. Ultimately, whether you hire editors or other people or not, ultimately you are responsible for what you
Ultimately,
put into
you
the
are.
world.
Yeah. It's your
It is
copyright, guys.
your
You own
intellectual
it.
property. It's your intellectual property. It's your copyright. You own it. You're responsible for it. You're responsible for being honest about it at this point because of the controversy surrounding AI. You just need to be honest about AI. There are people that will support you 100% on both camps and people who will not like you
You just
in
find your
both
people.
camps of this divided camp. Find your people. It doesn't matter. Draft with AI, don't draft with AI, it doesn't matter. Just be honest about what you're doing. Okay, go
Exactly.
for Hachette.
Okay.
Let's talk
So
about
here we go.
Hachette.
Well, let's talk about the publisher and why they probably, let's go there and then we'll come down to editors in a second. But first, let's go to Hatchet. So the reason that a publisher exists, and we've talked about this in other podcasts, you guys need to understand this. A publisher, and I'm not, you guys also, I'm going to preface this. I'm not a huge fan of trad publishing. Like, there is a time and a place to use them, but there's a reason I started my business 10 years ago. And there's a reason why I run it the way I do. And there's also a reason why 99.9% of the authors that grace my desk are told by me, do this yourself if you can. Do not go to a publisher. Because why? I mean, unless you're specifically targeting that publisher and using them to leverage a certain aspect of your legacy, there's no reason to go to a trad publisher today in today's world because you can run this business probably better than they can. Period. The end. Now, that being said, Shy Girl, maybe Mia had a reason she went to Hatchet. Maybe it was ego. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was because she wanted to break into the UK market. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. And I'm not going to speculate because I don't know her. But had she had talked to me, I would have probably said, you're already selling a ton of books. Why are you even doing that? Why even go to Hatchet? Like, why are you even going there? But okay. Now, here's where this goes with Hatchet. from the perspective, now I'm going to put the publisher hat on. All publishers have the right and the ability to choose who they work with. They have been very, very picky for many hundreds of years, guys. They are very good at saying no, 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 right? Like we all know this because we all talk about it. We know that they do this. That is their privilege of being the snobs that they are, right? Now, most of the time, the reason they are doing that is because they're picking and choosing books that they know that they can make money from. They are in the business to make money. That is what publishers do. They are not artists. They are not people who, as much as we want to believe that they're philanthropic, thropic, whatever. And they're like, I want to be a supporter of the arts. No, ultimately it's about capitalism, guys. It is. They have to stay in business, right? So they take on a bunch of titles, and those titles are copywritten so that they can share that copyright and sell the words that are come out of the author's brain and onto paper, and they sell it. Now, about 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, publishing kind of flipped over from this very snobby, we're going to collect query letters, to people can already sell books on their own. We can decide whether or not we want to take on the book based on the track record, and whether or not this author has what's called a platform, which is an audience that's already built in. Shy Girl, Mia Ballard, had already built an audience. Like she'd already built a platform. And so that's why Hatchet was onto her, is because, this girl's making money. And so we can make money if we bring on her book, right? And so that was the whole deal. The problem, guys, lies in copyrightable material. If the material is not copyrightable, then a publisher can't really own something that's not ownable. And right now, if you want to find out why that, I've even said that, go back to our podcast with Bradley Frazier, and we talk about this in great length. And I'm not going to dive into that right now because that's not really what we're talking about. What we're talking about, though, is that the publisher couldn't continue to sell a product that's not copyrightable. That is just not capable. They're not capable of doing that. There is in the contracts for years, there have been built-in clauses that say that the author is warranting that the work that they have published, or the work that they're submitting, or the work that they're publishing with the author, with the publisher, is their work. Now, Troy and I have discussed that before the advent of AI, that warrant was actually because we wanted to make sure that we were working with people who weren't stealing or plagiarizing.
Weren't plagiarizing.
Work.
Well, yeah.
And that's it, but it's grown into this other kind of world because of where we exist.
The thing is, we don't know, and Thad even mentioned this in an article, but I hate to give the guy credit for anything. But he says maybe that publishing contracts are going to have to change to where the author is responsible wholly for the content that they produced, whether they produced it with AI or not. We don't have the right language right now to deal with AI. And here's the thing I was telling Stacey earlier. Well, first of all, here's a couple things that relate to what she said. First of all, publishers operate in their own self-interest because they are a business. What do you think Amazon has been doing the whole time they've been publishing us?
Exactly.
They operate in their own self-interest for their own profit. They are not being philanthropic by publishing authors and opening the gate so that tons of authors can self-publish.
Right.
No, they're making money off of you. Publishers have a fiduciary responsibility, especially if they're a publicly traded company, to protect their investors, to protect the people around them, to protect whatever endowments they may have, whatever the case may be. They have that responsibility to protect those people by only taking on books that they can copyright because of intellectual property laws. The only thing that a publisher owns is
that IP.
Literally a temporary right to use your IP to create products that they can sell. That is
Right.
all. It's not even their IP. It's your IP with your
Right.
copyright. They just license it for a period of time.
Exactly.
That's how a publisher works, right?
Right.
So they're obviously operating in their self-interest, but at the same time, if it turns out that that material is not copyrightable, now then they should and rightly do cancel the contract. Now here's the only thing I would say about Hachette where there was a failing there. Probably what they should have done instead of just immediately canceling things, especially since they'd already published the book in the UK, is they should have suspended publishing and conducted an investigation.
Right.
That's what they should have done. That investigation should be talking to the author, looking at previous manuscripts, and seeing whether it or not there
And
indeed was the
see,
use of AI. Not by using an AI detector, not by trusting that the New York Times and their source used an AI detector, but by actually looking at the
I
manuscripts
am going to
themselves.
give a little bit of a benefit of a doubt here, though. We don't know whether or not Hatchet did that or not. We
We
don't
don't.
know.
Well, they did. They canceled so quickly that I doubt that they launched an investigation of any thoroughness
Yeah. And
immediately.
they really publicly haven't really, I haven't seen any kind of public statement where they've come out and said anything to that extent. But I will say this. I am going to give them a little bit of a benefit of the doubt because they've got skin in the game too, guys. It costs a lot of money to publish a book. A lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like Disney when they didn't cancel Snow White because Rachel Zegler was being a dimwit. They kept trying to reevaluate, rehash, reconfigure, redo. Like, let's try to work around this. What we've already created, we've already invested, we've already done. It's the same thing here. I want to believe that maybe there was some degree of that. But nowadays I'm kind of a cynic, so who knows?
Well, right. I think from a PR perspective, the
They should
publisher
have come
definitely
out.
could have the publisher definitely could have handled things
They could have
differently.
handled things
And
differently.
so I think that Hachette has proven and look, there's some outcry on the internet, oh, we should not place books with Hachette, we should boycott them, whatever. Okay, first of all, that's probably going to make very little to no difference to Hachette. The second thing is this just proves the whole point that we've said all along is that if you can do this yourself, you should, because
You should.
traditional publishing, for the most part, is operating on an old model. And we can talk about this in detail another time, but they're
Another
working on an
time.
old model and not using modern publishing techniques that indies are using. And I was really relieved to see in the interview with the CEO of Macmillan the other day was that
Yeah.
he is definitely moving towards embracing new ways of publishing and new ways of
Mm-hmm.
using modern technology in the publishing industry. That's what we need to do as publishers. So if you're a publisher
Mm-hmm.
out there, that's what we need to move towards. If you're if you're a small press, you're probably nimble enough and fast enough to do this in a better way than traditional publishers do. And so I feel like that's where the difference is going to change. Again, I've talked about micro communities where we're going to move from this mass audience idea of trying to do things that way to micro communities. And those micro communities surrounding authors and small presses are really going to be where it's at for the future of authorship. However, so it means that Hachette is a dinosaur anyway, right?
Right.
So they handled things poorly. Big surprise. Publishers handle things poorly all the time. They've confessed to us they don't even know how to sell books in front of Congress for like 2 weeks. Okay. So if the reason you're not going to Hachette is because of this, well, you missed a few things that happened earlier that you shouldn't do anything with them anyway. So that's my take on that
Amen.
type of traditional publishing. So you can be mad at Hachette right now if you want to be, because the way they handled it, the PR, they threw that author under the bus, all that kind of stuff, the emotional reaction to it. The truth is, the legal reaction to it was something that they had every right to
They had
do.
every right
Is
to do,
it?
and they should
Is
have
it?
done.
And they to
Ultimately, if
protect
if
her,
if they did find that she did use AI, if they did find that, they should pull the book. Just like
right?
if she had plagiarized, they should pull the book.
Yes,
And
it's just
and
their job to do due
it's their
diligence
job to
and show
do.
us that they've done that.
Right.
But anyway, all that being said, so shoving cachet aside, because
Right.
other than just the fact of like, this is the way publishing is going to work. And if we are going to introduce AI books, because the one thing that this highlights is the widespread use of AI.
Right.
More authors are using AI for more things than people are talking about.
Right.
And again, I'm not anti-AI. That's absolutely fine. And there are some people who are using it for outlining, some people are using it for various aspects of editing, things like that. But here's the thing is that it's an imperfect system.
Yeah.
If you're using that as the whole system itself. And again, the authors that I know who are what I would call AI writers, who use AI to write their books on a regular basis, to draft and write their books, also, every one of them that I've talked to puts a tremendous amount of human effort into making that voice sound like their own,
Okay.
right? If they don't, and these are the ones, so I'm talking about people that are doing it in a professional way and that are making
Right.
money at it, and who have books that if you put them in AI checker, they don't show up as 100% AI. Why? Because they're not anymore. That person has put human effort
Well,
into
I
it.
don't
Okay.
trust AI checkers. Remember, we've got
Yeah.
100% AI
But yeah,
checkers telling people that they're 100% human when they're not. So
right.
that's not my
Exactly.
point. My point is
So
how I
yeah.
feel. Like Frankie Shelf said,
Hmm.
if there's an unshakable feeling, or if I can detect those ghosts in the writing, I'm going to call out the author. And
Hmm.
so here's where we kind of shift into the editing side of things. So let me
Oh,
explain to you this.
yes.
There is this huge amount of authorship going on that they're getting called out for their AI use, and they're blaming their editors. Let me explain to you something about editing. First of all, if you are throwing your book into an AI editor and having the AI editor improve, revise, rewrite this book, then yes, you're going to have an AI be inserted into your book.
Hmm.
That and if you're an editor using those particular settings, stop it
Hmm.
right this second. Stop
Yeah.
using those features.
They're terrible
They're
anyway. They're
terrible.
terrible.
They're terrible, and shame on you, editor, are being lazy. Now,
Yes.
then here's the other thing. Human editors, nine out of 10 of them, and I work with a lot of them besides Troy, believe it or not, I have lots of editor friends. We don't
We do
use,
have friends.
yeah,
We
we
do
do
have
have
friends.
friends. We
We
do have friends.
swear.
Um, they don't use those particular tools. But for over 2 decades, I would say probably close to 3 now, we've been using things called spell check, or we've been using things called grammar check, and even Grammarly and spell perfected and pro
And
writing
pro writing
rate.
it.
They all three of those use these three. I mean, Microsoft has its own. You've seen it. It's a little red line that comes
Oh,
underneath it, which is, by the way, it's
yeah.
horrible, but it's there.
Yeah.
Those tools, those don't insert the AI voice. So if your editor is using those tools to edit your book, you can't blame them for inserting AI. That's not going to trigger the AI. So quit throwing your editor under the bus and quit doxing
Well,
your editors for that.
also,
But also, you should be checking your own damn manuscript when you get it back from them.
right. But the only time that is even the ultimate responsibility still lies with the author,
The
because the
author.
only
Mm-hmm.
way that all of that gets back in without the author noticing is for them to go into Word when they get their manuscript back from their editor and go to the review tab and hit accept all changes and
Yeah.
stop tracking.
Right.
Right? When you do that, then all of those changes that your editor made disappear. But if you are trusting your editor 100%, I was telling hey, Stacy, I have a meeting this morning with a client who I'm editing her book, and I fully expect her to push back on some of
Mm-hmm.
my edits. Why? Because it's her book. It's not mine. So what I think might be better for the book, she might not. We just went through a huge process with this gal that was one of the
Oh,
funnest editing processes
I
I've
cannot
ever
wait
been
till this
through.
book comes out.
And it was a guided rewrite, essentially, where her and I worked together on every single chapter as she rewrote the book. We reworked the plot, reworked the outline, and worked our way through every single chapter together, like
Mm-hmm.
working together almost in real time. It was amazing. It was super fun. And she's an amazing author. She did amazing responses, but there were places where she said, "This is why this thing is in this book. So don't touch it," right? Because it's her story. So
Mm-hmm.
she didn't accept every suggestion that I put in it, even as closely as we work together. Okay. That's what I expect from an author. So if your editor is introducing AI by using those rephrase, rewrite things and stuff like that, you as the author should be catching it and saying, "That's not my voice.
Mm-hmm.
You know your voice." Now, okay. So that's the ultimate responsibility still lies with the author. Now, editors, again, like Stacy said, if you're using those rephrase,
Shame
rewrite
on you.
things, first of all, shame on you. Second of all, most of those, what I found is they're terrible.
Yeah.
Pro Writing Aid, I love Pro Writing Aid. Use it all the
I love
time.
Tom.
Fantastic tool. Love
Yep.
Tom. Love the team there. Great stuff. Amazing stuff. But if Pro Writing Aid had its way, there would be no passive voice in the English language anywhere ever again, which is not possible to write a book that way, especially in dialogue and other contexts like that. Now, does it do a good job? Yeah, it does a good job, but it doesn't do a great job the way, because
Right.
part of it, you as a human editor have to discern when it's okay and when it's not. That's what the
Mm-hmm.
human editor is for. If you as an author go through and accept all the changes that Pro Writing Aid and Grammarly or whatever tell you to put in your manuscript, you will edit your voice
You're
right
gonna
out of it.
your voice. And I actually have a client right now that she recognized that she did that after I had pointed out something in some other context, and she I think it was one of my classes that she attended, and I had mentioned that these editors sometimes, if you just accept everything, will just edit out your voice. She went back and
Mhm.
reread her manuscript after that class, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, my voice is gone." So she is
Yeah.
now rewriting her she's rewriting it. She's going
Yeah, I
back.
would tell you in that case. So the reason we keep every version of a manuscript that we create is so when we realize something like that happened, we go back to a previous version.
Previous version. Mm-hmm.
So please, versioning. Oh gosh, that's a
Oh
whole other
yeah,
topic
that's a
about
whole other topic.
versioning,
We'll talk about that later.
versioning and file
I
management. Please do not just
yeah.
rename your file every time and not save the old version. There's tons of reasons. Oh God. Okay,
We'll talk
but
about
this
that
is just
later.
but this is just one of them. This is just
Right.
one of them. Let's say that Mia handed her manuscript off to her friend editor, and her friend editor used that rephrase, rewrite, revise, and revised her voice out of it. Mia should have gotten that back, said, "My voice is gone. Oh crap," and gone back to the previous version and started the edit over again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. First of all, we have this thing about speed and efficiency, which we talked about a few weeks ago in the writing industry and publishing industry. I'm like, stop it with the
This is a slow process.
speed and efficiency,
Yeah.
because it's
This
not about speed and efficiency. It's about the quality of the art that you're producing. Now, if you can
right.
produce great art fast and efficiently, fantastic. I have a friend of mine who is now 93 years old, who is one of the fastest artists I have ever seen in my life and draws constantly. And he can draw you a picture in like you can be talking to him for 40 minutes while you're talking to him, he's sketching, and in 40 minutes, he has a frame-worthy picture for you,
I'm
right?
impressed with how fast James
That's,
Owen draws that
I
dragon.
know. It's amazing, right? So there's some artists that can create quality art quickly. I'm not saying that you can't, right? But what I'm saying is what's important is the quality of the art. If the art is not higher quality because of its speed, well, and I'm all about fast drafting for manuscripts as well, too. So I talk about that all the time. But let's stop with the speed and efficiency of publishing and let's slow down and talk about the art of publishing and producing quality work. Okay, let's just do that. And I'm not putting any judgment on whether Mia's work is quality or not. I have not read the whole book. I would love to at some point. Now I'm kind of curious. I looked at the cover and the blurb and stuff like that and read a few excerpts, and I'm like, I'm actually kind of curious because the premise of this story sounds pretty cool, right? But I haven't looked at the execution. I haven't read the whole thing, so I don't want
Yeah,
to pass judgment on that. But
I've gone
as
in
an
there and
editor, I would almost love to get my little paws on that
oh
thing.
yeah, as an
But anyway,
editor, it would be kind of an interesting
because I'm intrigued,
work.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have to understand, as an editor, one of the reasons that I love to edit is I love stories. So I am intrigued by your story. So I
Mm-hmm.
want to edit your story because it speaks to me in some way and I'm intrigued by it.
Mm-hmm.
Which brings us to the fact of one of the comments that I saw online on one of the very reactionary posts. I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
name names or anything as much as I would love to. I'm not going to do it. But there was an editor who responded to that post and basically said, I have just taken the stance as an editor that I am not going to edit AI generated work because first of all, I don't like it. I don't like the way it sounds and stuff like that. Second of all, if something like this were to happen with something that I edited and there was a big controversy about whether the author used AI or not, I don't want my name
Yeah,
associated
and
with
see,
that
and we
controversy.
talked about this. So here's the
Hmm.
thing, and this is, and personally, I mean, I can put my name on this. Is I'm not willing to take and put my name, my stake right there, and say, okay, I'm just flat out not going to. But I will say this: I have established authors that I've worked with for several books now. If they came to me and said, Stace, I've got this manuscript and I read it and I can tell that they've, because I know the voice, right? And I can tell that they've implemented AI. I will have that conversation with them. I will say, did you do this on purpose? And if you did, like, what do you want to do about it? And that conversation will go forward. If I have a new author that comes to me with a manuscript that is wholly and solely written with AI, and I can just I can't discern a voice from it that's theirs, and instead I'm only seeing AI. I again will have that conversation with them, but I will 100% put either one, not my name. I'm not going to be associated with it in any way, shape, or form for as an editor on that manuscript. And or I will be putting my name on your copyright, but I will also be outing you as an AI author. And here's why: because you authors are out there throwing editors under the bus and telling everybody that it's your editor's fault. And I'm not going to have my name and my reputation and my company dragged through the mud or or upturned, and my livelihood is now over because you weren't strong enough or willing enough to say, yeah, I used AI.
Yeah, this is my policy on this 100% is that you have to be 100% honest with me. If I detect what I think by reading your manuscript, I detect what I think is AI and it's an AI voice. I'm not using AI detectors. I can't trust them, so I'm
I
not going
can't
to
trust
use
them.
that.
I'll use
I'm
my
going to
voice.
use
I'll use my
I'm going to
brain.
use I'm going to use my brain, and
Mm-hmm.
then I come to you and I ask you, did you use AI? And you say,
Mm-hmm.
no, I didn't use AI at all. And I can clearly tell that
You
at least in
did.
appearance you used AI or you write like an LLM.
Or like
Either
Frankie,
way,
I can say, I have an unshakable feeling.
mhm, then I'm going to turn away your manuscript because the number
Mm-hmm.
one thing for me with authors and AI is not whether or not you use it. I
It's
don't
honesty.
care. It is honesty and
It's honesty.
transparency. The number one thing I want from publishers is honesty and transparency. Do you publish AI manuscripts or not? At Alibi Syndicate Press, we say no, we do not. We can't copyright it. We are not going to publish it. It's
Right.
not because it's because we can't own it. The CEO at Macmillan said same thing. We should link that interview below too.
I will.
He
I'll
said
link
the
it. It's
same thing
great.
the other day in an interview as he basically because the guy asked him about AI and authors, and he basically said, and one of the things he said, by the way, is that publishing is looking for the outliers,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're looking
Yeah.
for books that stand out, that are different, that are unique, that have a unique voice and are
Mm-hmm.
telling a story in a unique way.
Right.
Because a lot of books nowadays sound even without the AI issue being added into it, is people are writing to a market so they sound a lot alike. The
Mm-hmm.
originality is gone from a lot of different things. But anyway, that's a whole other
That's
topic.
a whole other
But
topic.
but to keep it simple, basically, first of all, I most of the time if I'm going to edit your manuscript, I need to be intrigued or invested in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like earlier this year, I did a huge amount of editing and even some rewriting of a manuscript of a guy who had Parkinson's. He was unable to type anymore. and I felt a passion for his story, so I helped him get it out into the world for way less money than I should have charged.
Mhm.
Okay. The reason I did it,
There's where the philanthropy comes in.
that's where the philanthropy comes in, but it's also because I did not want him to put that through AI and have AI edit or write it because it was so much his voice in that book.
Hmm.
I wanted to preserve that voice and put it out into the world exactly the way he wrote it because that's what he deserved.
Hmm.
Okay. Your story matters. We have shirts that say it. Your story matters. Your story deserves to be told in your voice and in your way. If you need to use AI as a tool to help you get that out there, I am 100% in favor of that.
Right.
Right? I'm absolutely in favor of it. But if I ask you if you use AI, you said, no, I did not use AI. And I can tell you clearly did use AI, or that there's something else seriously wrong with your writing and perhaps your brain, and you might need to go have an MRI, then I'm not going to take on your manuscript as an editor. It's
Right.
just that simple. The honesty is the number one thing with me. With a publisher, if you're going to turn in a manuscript to us and I say, did you use AI? And you say, no, and I can tell you use AI, it's an immediate rejection and I'll never take anything from you ever again.
Hmm.
And the reason is because I can't trust you.
Right.
This business, as many other businesses, is built 100% on trust,
Hmm.
right? Trust but verify, right? You tell me you did not use AI, it's very possible Mia told Hachette she did not use AI. Hachette should have verified. Perhaps they did. Perhaps they did some due diligence. They came to the conclusion that it was not AI until
Hmm.
these suspicions came up. Whether these suspicions are founded or not is 100% rests with Mia, right? But the number one thing, the most important thing, is that everyone in the situation is honest going
Hmm.
forward. Why did Thad write that LinkedIn article? I would like to know why he wrote it, because what it feels like to me when it gets down to the end of the article is that he thought he was going to be credited in the New York Times for bringing this story forward. He thought he was going to have more say in the way the story was presented, and he didn't. It's a pride thing,
Hmm.
right? It's not even about, but essentially what he did was painted a target on his back because he
Right.
acknowledged that I brought this to the media, which is the whole trigger for everything that happened after that.
Which, by
So
the
he
way,
basically wrote
his little
a
thumbnail on his
confession.
article was AI in the first. It's just so funny.
Oh yeah.
It's so
It
ironic.
it was basically a confession. And even at the end, he talks about, oh, well, publishers and AI are going to have to be done differently and all this other stuff. But I'm like, why did you pick this specific example? But a better piece of journalism, here's a tip for you, Thad. Small rant, tiny little rant about journalism, but about things like this in general. Okay. If we're going to talk about AI and publishers and how publishers should react to it and what authors should do about it and how those two things should work together, pick 7, 8, 10, 12 examples and use all of them. Picking
Hmm.
one is targeting someone.
Right.
Okay. End of story. You did a journalism targeting piece on this person for whatever reason, right? And I don't know
Well,
what
it
that
seems
reason
like
was.
a lot of readers do this nowadays. I mean, it's kind of the reader
Mhm.
thing, right? Like they pick a like look what
Yeah, but
they're yeah.
journalists should be different.
Journalists should be
Journalists
different.
should
There
be
is a
different.
standard and there
You
is a
have a
code.
responsibility to the public and to authors and to those people that you're using as examples to contact them, because there's plenty of AI authors that you can contact that are wide out in the open. The New York Times did it in another article, right? There's all kinds of those authors that you could bring in as sources and to talk about exactly what happened. You could have an interview with the publisher. There was not a thing in there that said Hachette was not available for comment or whatever, that type of thing, right? Or author was not available for comment or did not respond to requests for comments. The reason that was not in there is you didn't try to contact her. Okay. Those are journalistic basics that are hurting situations like this by throwing people under the bus without the original contact and without saying, hey, here's 8 other examples of the exact same thing that's happening. And here are publishers that are publishing AI books, because there are publishers that are publishing them. Future Fiction, Future Fiction Academy, Future Fiction Academy Press, or Future Fiction Press. How do they
Uh-huh.
put that?
I
I don't
don't
remember
know.
what the name is, but either way, there are presses that are publishing AI that you can get comment from, that are publishing AI work. The fact that you didn't do any of that on the part of the New York Times and the part of that is poor journalism. It's piss poor journalism. Stop it. If we're going to report on this stuff, let's be objective, let's be fair, and let's talk to lots of people. End of story.
End of
Rant. Go ahead.
end of rant on the journalism side. Period.
Makes
But
me mad.
yeah, so so yeah, just so I guess if you're still sticking with us through this rant, ultimately I want people to understand two things. One, slow down, please slow down. Avoid being reactionary. Troy and I, we're business partners. We can be reactionary behind closed doors, but before you go public with your opinions and with your words, it's always a good idea to go ahead and immediately have your emotional reaction, and then give yourself a minute to kind of have a timeout and think things through logically. And that's a good rule of thumb for everything that you go through in your life. I mean, it's one of the things. It's a good parenting tip. Everybody says, don't ever punish your kids as a reactionary, you don't react, right? You first got to calm down, and then you have your consequence session with your children. It's the same thing here. I think way too many people react, and they post things and they say things before they should. And what it does is, like Troy says, it kind of puts a target on your back, because now what you've done is you've turned around and you've said something, or you've done something that can cause harm to others and to yourself and to your reputation. So you might as well just slow down. The second thing is understand and know that there are multiple sides to multiple stories. And in this particular business, in the industry that we're in, there are a lot of moving pieces. And I talk about this when I talk about the publishing world in general. When I'm working with an author and I'm helping them build their author business, they learn about all these moving cogs that have to kind of fit together, and which cogs you're going to swap out, and so on. And I talk about this machine being this big thing. And the reason it's this big thing is because there's all these moving pieces, there's all these moving parts. And in this story in particular, Mia Ballard, she had her writing, her editor, her publisher. Not only that, but all the people involved in the beginning phases of this book before she even went to Hatchet. Like, she had all these other things that she did to make this book come out. Then she pulled it. Then she put it in with Hatchet. Then the Hatchet had all their moving pieces, which are, essentially the same roles, but much bigger or much broader, because they have that overhead. There's just so much going on here. So as a reader, or as a published author who has a strong opinion, I'm not going to name names, but as you people who come into this thing and you throw out your opinions, a lot of times you're throwing out opinions that are so one-sided that you look dumb, because you don't understand everything that's going into this. And there are so many things going into this: copyright law, there's the AI litigations, there's the writing litigations, there's the editing implications and responsibilities and fiduciary responsibilities, there's the publishing responsibilities. There's just so many things that go into this, and so many livelihoods that hinge on an author being honest, like Troy said. And so really, like, there's the crux of it, right?
Yeah, and there's one more thing here, is that, so some people are saying, hey, this guy came out, the New York Times, Hachette, and basically ended this author's career. And I'm like, okay, first of all, the reason that's not true is I've seen lots of authors come back from lots of things.
Oh, yeah.
But essentially where that argument breaks down is what this author has been accused of is being an AI writer. Well, if being an AI writer is not a negative term, and that's okay, then the way she was outed as an AI writer, if she indeed is one, may have been harmful, but the label itself is, if we're being honest about the way publishing is going at this moment, is not harmful. I know lots of AI writers. I'm happy to call them my friends, right? So the label itself is not bad. The way it was placed upon her and the way it came out, and the fact that it may or may not be true is
And the
is
fact and
negative,
her
right?
reaction to it,
But
and her reaction to it, right? Like her,
her
like, I'm
reaction
not,
to
I'm
it,
not, I'm not.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it may be just the situation that, hey, if you indeed are an AI writer, just own it. It's
Right.
okay. Because there are plenty of people who will perfectly accept you as being an AI writer. There are people that will not. There are publishers that will not. There are editors that will not work with you, but there are editors who will work with you. And there
Mm-hmm.
are publishers who will work with you. That's part of it. But when we come out, so one of the reactionary posts that I saw pointed out that the guy who wrote the LinkedIn post and confessed to being the one that outed this author is a white male, and she is
Oh.
a female person of color. And the implication in that particular post
Was that
was
he
that
was
he was
racist?
racist or misogynist. We have no proof of that. And calling someone a racist and misogynist without foundation can literally ruin their career.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's take a minute and slow down and say, if I'm going to react because I think this person pushed this person out and that lied about them or whatever the case may be, or just outed them for using AI, which lots of other people are using and it's perfectly okay. Well, it actually is perfectly okay that lots of people are using AI. If this author did use AI and she comes out as honestly that, yeah, I'm an AI writer, she's got a whole community of people that are going to welcome her,
Yeah.
right? Her career is not over. If we indeed find out that this guy who outed her is a racist and misogynist, it can end his career as a
Mm-hmm.
journalist,
Mm-hmm.
right? So let's be careful about throwing labels at people when the reason we're mad at those people is because they threw labels at someone else. That's
Not
not
only
the right
that,
thing to do.
not only
It's
that,
not the right thing to do.
get your skin, get your skin out of the game. If you like, this is the thing that I get really, this is like, we make fun of Karens for this all the time, right? Like the Karens, the word Karen, the label of Karen,
Hmm.
people who get like all butthurt about stuff that's not even their fight, like that's the other
Hmm.
thing. Like a lot of people are commenting that really just have no concept of what the real skin in the game is. You know what I mean?
Right.
And or they talk from places of emotion instead of or offense because of one way or another that they sit on the fence. I feel like it's one
Right.
of those things where you should just kind of slow down, think about your own perspective biases and point of view before you throw yourself out there to the wolves. And I feel bad for Mia. I feel bad for her because one, she's if she did in fact use AI and she's ashamed of that, that is something that she's going to have to get over. If she in fact did hire an editor that she didn't follow up behind and fix whatever, and that editor did in fact insert AI, shame on that editor. And yeah, they should be called out for that. However, if Mia's using that as an excuse, which is what I'm seeing a lot of authors do right now, in a lot of podcasts, in a lot of ways, a lot of authors are going, well, my editor. Mm, it gets me a little bit irritated, especially with the Mila Milo situation, because that was what he did is he threw his editors and Reedsy under the bus. And it came out later that the Reedsy editors weren't even hired to do an edit. They were hired to do man reviews, and those man reviews came back and told him
Oh,
he was not
no.
ready to publish, and he published anyway. And yeah, but he was
Yeah.
trying really hard to destroy these
Well,
editors' careers. And I'm
I
like,
have
that's
one
irritating.
I have one other take on this, and this is really like my final take on this is Mia, if you're listening, or anybody that knows her is listening, or whatever, or if somebody sees this online, whatever the case may be. Here's the
Yeah.
deal, Mia. Turn this into a positive. There's no such thing as bad publicity.
No.
Yank that book back, put a different cover on it, republish it, and you'll be freaking famous.
Yeah.
And you'll make all kinds of sales
Not only
because there are
that,
all kinds of
you
authors
were doing
are
it
supporting you.
anyway.
And I mean, hey, as a result of all this, if you put your book back on the market, I'm buying it. I'm going to read it. I'm going to review it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And not only
Because here's
that,
the deal. Like what you could prove by this whole thing is Hachette were jerks. This guy Thad was jerks. The New York Times was jerks, but there's no such thing as bad publicity. Publish that book, own your story, whether you used AI with it or not, just own your story, own that you published it, and show the world that you don't need somebody like Hachette to be success.
yeah, she
Do
was
it.
already doing that.
You were
She
already
was
successful.
already doing that.
You'll be
Like,
even more successful now with all the publicity surrounding this. You'll be even more successful now. Just do it. Hachette has not ruined your career. They have opened up a door for you.
right.
They have opened a door for you. Step through it, own it, go forth and do wonderful things.
Yeah.
I'm 100% behind you.
But
Do it.
do it
Do it
honestly.
honestly. Just do it
Do it
honestly.
honestly. And that's the thing. So, I mean, just, we're all learning how to live in this new world. I'm going to just tell you,
Yeah.
though, that as an editor, I'm going to protect myself and my business because my livelihood, there's more than just me relying on
Yeah.
me. That, I'm a
We have
business
partners.
I'm a
We have
business
friends.
partner. I have family. I have, I have authors that depend on me. I have like, it's a really important part and thing for me to think about the way I approach manuscripts with authors. And like I said, I've said this from the very beginning of my business and my career is that working with an author becomes kind of a friendship because you become
Mm-hmm.
you're naked in front of each other. Ultimately your emotions are stripped down, your feelings are stripped down. We're sharing like very intimate parts of ourselves when we dive into a book. Good editors can see through the words to the writer.
Mm-hmm.
We can see the aspects of the writer through those words, and we can understand where they're coming from. And especially when you go through that revision process with them, you know where things are coming from. It's very, very intimate, and it's important. It's an important relationship that is established. When I do that, I want to make sure I'm doing that with an authentic author. I'm doing that with somebody who's authentically written that book. And when it's an AI written book, I know that doesn't exist. So that's kind of where I'm going to be. As far as an editor, I'm going to know, okay, this is where I'm at. But I expect honesty. I expect full transparency in that relationship. I mean, I'm going to give it to my author, so I expect the same in return.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it is what it is. Publishers, they come from a role of making money, and you're just going to have to know that. And if you don't want to have somebody have that kind of control over your work, why are you even going to them?
Don't go to him in the first place.
Don't go to them
Really,
in the first
honestly.
place. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
I mean,
like
if
that's
you even use a spark of AI, a tiny bit of AI in your work and you think it might be a problem, just don't ever go to a
just don't
traditional
go to a
publisher.
trad
There
publisher.
it's not worth it.
Yeah,
I mean, if anything,
whatever.
this whole thing has taught us that it's not worth it, that you don't need them. This person was successful anyway. She would have continued to be successful. Would readers have still said, oh, maybe this is AI, maybe it's not? Yeah, whole book clubs of
Maybe.
people reading your book. Okay. It's just like when Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code was a big
Oh
controversy, and a
yeah.
bunch of fundamental Christians were like, oh, this is terrible. Let's start a book club and read about it so we can pick all the things that are
Or
wrong
when
about Dan Brown's book. Hey,
Harry Potter was
Dan
banned
Brown
as a
was super.
witchcraft book.
Oh yeah,
Didn't
Dan Brown was super excited about the Da Vinci Code that happening. He sold millions of copies to people that were his enemies who left
yeah.
bad reviews. Awesome, man! If you want to buy a million of my books and leave bad reviews on them, come on, baby, bring it on. Ban
Bring
the
it
crap
on.
out of
Yeah,
that.
bad
You
publicity is
know.
just as good as
So
good publicity.
yeah, so this woman was making money anyway. I'm encouraging her seriously. Republish that book. Face all the critics, and
Just
who cares?
call it what it is.
Call it what it is and make your
Yeah.
money and move on. Anyway,
Exactly.
so
Exactly. So, like I said,
anyway, all
to
right.
the critics out there, to the people that are criticizing, just slow down. That's my advice. Realize that everybody has different perspectives and points of view, and you do too.
Yeah.
And don't take
pull the
ownership
emotion
of
out
your
of the
own
situation.
Yeah. Be honest with your own self about your own biases. But anyway, so yeah, that's all we have to say about that. Keep writing, stay weird, and make sure you like, subscribe, and follow for, more rants from Troy and Stacy. We're happy to supply them. Anyway, you guys take care.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll talk to you later.